Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk6527. CryptoPunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of PunkCast. Today we've got Punk6507. He's a Atty with beautiful clown blue eyes and frumpy hair. He's one of the prominent punks in the community and often featured in media spots talking about NFTs on platforms such as Bloomberg and Real Vision. He's an avid NFT collector and currently advisor to MeBits DAO and a senior director at Fireblocks, an institutional-grade digital asset business. Please welcome Sergito to the show. Serge, salute you. Hey. How are you, GM?
GM, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Of course, man. Of course. Been a huge fan. Been watching you since I first got into the space. I think you were one of the first guys I followed when I got in via Nifty Gateway.
I appreciate that. Those days were fun.
They were fun. I wish they were still coming back. But maybe we can start off easy, Sergito. So not too sure if it's sort of common knowledge, but it'd be good to sort of understand, I guess, your background and how you sort of found yourself into Web3.
Sure. So I spent the first 12 years of my career working on trading desks, TradFi, traditional finance, Wall Street. And during the pandemic, I had, for the first time ever, bought some crypto, both Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, things were so hectic at work and, as you remember, in life with quarantine and everything, I just didn't pay too much attention to it. Kind of left it on weekly buys and forgot about it. And it wasn't until later in 2020 that I checked my Coinbase app and realized that it was a significant amount at the time. And that kind of reminded me, okay, well, maybe you should really look into this crypto thing. Started digging around, trying to learn more about what was happening at the time, which DeFi had just come off its DeFi summer, but obviously a lot of innovation that came out of that. I reached out to a couple of friends who were in the space. They sent me some materials. I did a little bit more reading on DeFi, and then one day I was reading The Defiant, which is it was a newsletter. Now it's like a full-blown media site, and I saw G Money had just bought his CryptoPunk, his ape CryptoPunk, for like $140,000. And I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen or read. I used to write morning notes, kind of like research commentary notes, like market commentary notes to my clients at work. And I remember writing a note that was just highly critical and just making fun of the fact that people were spending six figures on JPEGs. And at the time, people were like, oh, the death of the dollar, it's just going on its way out. And I was like, well, this is really endemic, right? It's a sign of people thinking the dollar is going to be worthless one day. And so they're putting it in JPEGs. But it really sparked my curiosity. And so I found myself on the Punks Discord. I downloaded Discord for the first time. I don't have like a gaming background or anything like that. And I just found like a very strong community, very willing to educate, to help newbies understand the whys. I remember, chatting with Snowfro on DMs, and he was telling me more about punks. And, I didn't know how special a conversation was at the time. Now I look back and it's one of my fondest memories of my first days in the space. But that's pretty much what happened. It was just G Money aping into an ape punk.
That's crazy. Just G Money came from TradFi too, didn't he?
Yes, he's a former equity and options trader.
Yeah, okay. So it probably spoke to you in some ways as well. But maybe we can just go back a little bit further. I guess you said you put on just some regular buy orders on crypto, BTC and ETH at the time. Like when did you start that? And I guess what sort of triggered you to sort of do that, right?
Sure. So, I started my career. So let me go even further back. I'm from Mexico. I grew up on the border with Texas, grew up speaking Spanish, and then moved for college to Texas, to San Antonio, like many, many years ago now. And so I've always lived a bicultural, bilingual life. It's really allowed me to think of the world in different ways, kind of like a different framework for analyzing situations. I literally, grew up in a city where you go 1 mile north, you cross the border. It's like a McDonald's drive-through, but instead of getting hamburgers, you get your passport and your visa checked. And now you're in the States. Obviously, the contrast between Mexico, especially northern Mexico, and Texas is just wild. So the fact that it was so close to one city to the other, it was really interesting to grow up in that. Fast forward, I'm a GS. A lot of my former colleagues ended up leaving for crypto startups, Coinbase, Yuma Token, many others, NYDIG, and the like. I didn't really pay too much attention to crypto. I was obsessed with macro. I still am. I really love macroeconomics and the macro markets. And so crypto wasn't really something that I fully understood because, I don't have a programming background and I just didn't have the bandwidth. And I saw it run from $10 a Bitcoin to, $20,000 a Bitcoin in 2017. I remember my father sending me a text. My dad doesn't even speak English, lives in Mexico, sending me a text and saying, hey, my friends and I want to pitch in together to buy some of this Bitcoin thing. And I was like, okay, so that is the top signal if I've ever seen one. And I watched it crash back down. I had no exposure. If anything, just a little bit of FOMO. But then it didn't go to zero, right? Like it crashed massively, but it didn't go to zero. And I started realizing that, there was something there. Like the smartest people that I knew who were in the space had stayed, were still building, were still, kind of developing new things. And I was like, all right, this is really smart people building on this. It warrants keeping an eye on it. When COVID came and everything crashed, like every single market crashed, I realized, well, this thing is not going to go to zero. And this is just kind of like one of those crashes that happen every couple of generations. So might as well take advantage of it. And that's when I first started buying. I bought a nice chunk at the time and then just set the averaging buys every week and forgot about it. I think that was like March 19th or around there of 2020. I think I paid $110 per Ether at the time and like $3,600 for Bitcoin. But again, I didn't, I went back to just trying to survive. I live here in New York, so the pandemic was pretty rough, especially those next 2 months, March and April. The city it was really like an episode out of almost like The Walking Dead. So the last thing on my mind was to like pay closer attention. I wish I had, 2020 hindsight, but I'm happy that at least I had some exposure there automatically by then.
Awesome, man. And so talk to me about the next step then, because like, just like you, I think I bought and experimented with Bitcoin and ETH but I didn't really appreciate the power of crypto and ETH until I got it onto MetaMask and decentralized rails. Like you can have it on an exchange and play with it, but I think the magic happened when I was using Uniswap for the first time. Like, what was that experience like for you? Like, how did you sort of transition from that sort of centralized platform to the next?
Sure. So I went from centralized platform to really centralized platform. I had my Ether stuck in Coinbase because being a foreign national, they require me to have a New York State ID to be able to move my crypto out. And given that the city was shut down, I wasn't able to go get one. So my Ether was stuck in there. At the same time as I was learning more about NFTs, I found Nifty Gateway, which obviously was very easy to buy NFTs with just a credit card. For me, it was an absolute double win. It was NFT exposure without having to spend Ether. Not that I could anyways, because it was stuck on Coinbase. But it was a good way of just like pretty much getting Amex points for like $140,000. And I thought it was the most ridiculous, like pretty much getting Amex points. I ran up my Amex card. Supposedly it has no limit, and they cut me off eventually, just on 1 month on Nifty. But so yeah, I went from centralized to centralized, and it wasn't until I was able to get my New York State ID that I was able to move my Ether out. In between this, I ended up buying the Punk. That was like my first NFT purchase. I managed to buy that because I had left some money with my sister in Mexico, and I had told her to buy crypto. And so she was able to send me the 6.1 ETH that my Punk ended up costing. And that's really the reason why I was able to buy it before everything ran up. So it wasn't until a few months later when I was able to get my ether out and participate in the ecosystem. So it was a little bit different experience, I guess. I did a lot of reading. I read a lot of DeFi stuff, a lot of like white papers. I jumped on Bankless. I devoured that content all the way back, but I really couldn't practice it. So it was kind of like very academic at first.
Mm. So what came first? Was it DeFi or was it NFTs for you? Like, was
academically, DeFi, right? So I read a lot from this. So December, so the holidays, December, January of that year, I was reading a lot on DeFi and trying to understand the ecosystem, how it worked, how was it that people made so much money that summer, but I couldn't really participate in it because I didn't have liquid ETH.
This was December 2020?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So that was coming towards the end of DeFi summer, and then basically the NFT. That's when Nifty Gateway started getting pretty hot. All right. Cool. So your Punk was your first NFT. That's huge, man. Like, so you paid 6.1 ETH. That's not the one that you have now. What was your first Punk? Like?
No, this is my forever Punk. This, it's totally a floor. The reason why I bought a Punk was because, the community had been so welcoming, and I realized there's something really special amongst this group of people. Having kind of like read about DeFi and the like, I realized, it pays to be early. And to me, having a Punk meant like, hey, I've arrived. I'm in crypto now. It was 10 grand at the time. Back of my mind, I was like, not gonna lie, like not shaking, but really questioning my decision making. But I also kind of like was so big on paper, or not on paper, or like in reality on my ether that was stuck on Coinbase. So I was like, all right, this is a good way of kind of just this crashes and burns. It's not that much in the greater scheme of things, and it's a good cost to pay to really participate in the Punk's Discord. Because obviously when you're inside such a circle, if you're a member, even though at the time it was very welcoming of newbies like myself, obviously having a Punk completely changed kind of like your standing in the community. And I really wanted to belong to that community, just having seen how smart everybody was in there.
So the green name in the Discord meant a lot to you back then, as opposed to the white names or the yellow names.
Yeah, it meant a lot. It was a green name in the Discord, and when you bought your Punk, everybody will start spamming the "one of us" GIF. And I remember the feeling. It was Valentine's weekend. I had been in Discord the whole weekend, to the point that my wife was really starting to question me, because I was not paying attention to anything. And 6.1, the floor was running. It had jumped from like 4 ETH a few days prior. That's all the money I had. So I just bought the one that I could afford. And I'm really happy that I bought this one because it's a total floor Punk, and it really allowed me to brand myself around the floor Punk. I think people really like to brand themselves around, the high-end Punks, which is nice. But to me, it's just like, I'm just this kid from Mexico, and like that's my Punk.
Nice. So this is the one that you have now, 6507, is the first Punk you bought for 6 ETH. And yes. What date was that? Was that late December 2020?
No, it was Valentine's Day weekend of 2021.
Okay, yep. So that's still super early. Nice. So 6, yeah. Okay, I want to ask you about how you found out about Punks, but just before we get on to that, I do remember that feeling when you first buy a Punk and you go into the Discord or you tweet about it. The onboarding experience was quite unique back then, right? There was just a nice, welcoming, the One of Us meme with what was it movie from? With Leonardo DiCaprio, right?
Yeah, it's Wolf of Wall Street, I think.
Wolf of Wall Street, with a bang on the tables and they go, "One of us, one of us." It was and it was like habitual, right? Like everybody that got a Punk back then, and even still today, I think there's a bit of a celebration to welcome them all in, right? And I think for me at that time, I'm probably sure for you, is that was a unique experience, right, which I hadn't sort of experienced before. But like, what was going through your mind at that sort of point in time? Like, you were on the Discord and then you bought it, you tweeted it, and you celebrated. Like, what was that sort of onboarding experience like?
It felt very special. It felt, after everything we had been living through the pandemic, and I kept going to our office all through that year. So, really notice, how empty it was. Working on a trading floor, you sit, really, you can touch both people that are next to you. So there's kind of like a fraternity of the people that you work with. It's very loud. You yell asking for prices, you get prices back, execution. So there's always something happening. There's really no privacy. And to go from that, and that's all I've known in my professional career, to now just being there with only maybe like 6-7 people each day, and they're all sitting 2 rows away. It really had removed a lot of that feeling of belonging that I think human beings we naturally kind of flow towards. Being in the Punk's Discord pre-punk kind of reminded me of just how awesome it was to be around a group of people that were focused on similar things, that were all trying to help each other win, that were really at the forefront of something else in the financial markets. And I did equity derivatives. The narrative almost changes every day. What people are focused on changes every day. One day is now, for example, just using current events. So it's inflation, it's the Fed this week, it's US midterm elections next week, it's China maybe reopening from COVID. So there's a new narrative almost every day, and that really keeps it fresh. Being in the Discord, it was like that, where there was like a new narrative, like Prancy's buying female punks because they're rarer, or Prancy's doing this, or art blocks, or like all these other things that were popping up from the Punk's Discord at the time, kind of like really reminded me of that. So being there was super special. And then when I bought the Punk, I remember the feeling. I don't think I will ever forget the feeling of buying that Punk, seeing the transaction go through, realizing what I had just done. And then my first feeling was very similar to when I finished my first half Ironman, which was, I can't wait to do this again. And I can't wait to help others to do this as well. So I kind of made it a little mission to start onboarding friends that I cared about to Punks. And I started reaching out to people who were having both success on Nifty as artists, or other friends who were like art collectors in the real world, and telling them, hey, you need to come and be part of this.
Amazing. Mate, and so maybe we can just peel that back a little bit too. So like, how did you find out about CryptoPunks? Because you were hanging out in there before you bought your Punk, right? You were just vibing and hanging out with people. And I guess, what was the vibe like in there? Who were you sort of connected with? I think you sort of said, you mentioned Snowfro. Like, what sort of discussions were going on at that point in time that led you to go, yep, okay, I'm ready to buy a Punk. I need to have one.
Right. So I mentioned, reading on the Defiant about G Money buying his Ape Punk.
Got it.
Yep. And that I had to click around to find the Discord. I had no idea what it was. So that's how I ended up in there. And then the discussion, if I remember correctly, it was honestly a lot of traits and pricing. It was kind of like understanding rarities. Again, at the time, there was no real tastemakers yet. I would remember the floor was kind of compressed to some of like the mid traits that are now really well demanded. And again, the parallel to traditional finance and the trading floor, that reminded me of looking through different equity option trades and seeing where really there was value. What a way to express XYZ view in the market. You can use a bunch of different instruments. So this was, for example, in your case, the mustache and the knitted beanie, that man found out about Nifty Gateway because somebody mentioned it. So it was just kind of like sitting there and like, it's like a public square and people are having smart conversations. But I do remember the pricing talk. It was different than the floor talk that kind of like happened later on in a bunch of Discords later in the year. It was more kind of just trying to find value, trying to find trades, and trying to put capital to work. And it just really spoke directly to my just like my financial experience.
Absolutely. But because I think I bought my first Punk a little bit just after you, like maybe in March or April. But I sort of came into the Punk's Discord, and I think what you're sort of saying about narratives is very true, right? I think if a narrative sort of kicks off, it's almost like if you were in the Punk's Discord, it was able to trickle and permeate across the whole NFT space, right? If there was a collection that the Punks liked, then it would sort of, build on a life of its own. I think you just had to be in the Punk sort of Discord because that's where most of the action was happening at the time. Although most missed out on Bored Apes, right?
It was the center of the universe at the time. It's a very small place, right? Like there was not a lot of people doing NFTs. And yeah, between that and the Nifty Gateway Discord, I think it was, you had your bases covered for the majority of the action. Just to contrast as well what happened later on, with the floor conversation, now the majority of trades in a collection happen at the floor price, just given the focus on utility and the fact that it doesn't matter if you have a gold ape or a crazy eye ape, right? You're getting the exact same airdrops, you're getting the exact same access. We didn't have that back then, right? So it was more about your digital identity and which punk you really wanted to, hopefully represent you forever. Some of us didn't have a choice, right? We had like that amount of ETH and you bought the best available for the money. But there was a lot of, discussion around, picking the best trades and trying to understand what will, accrue the most value. And then we started seeing the big prints, the aliens trading, and then just a massive run up. That was, I think, the first big run up, I think, to like 25 Ether or something in a month, all coinciding with the broader NFT bull market, with people at Christie's, Pack being announced at Sotheby's, Mad Dog Jones being announced at Phillips. So it's kind of like the perfect bullish storm at the time.
Absolutely. Right. And so tell me about your punk as well. I think it's almost like your trademark now. I remember seeing it at the Punks brunch in New York. A Punk's Dead. It was like sort of the iconic sort of punk there. But did you have a selection process when you were picking through those traits, or was it just a floor trait that sort of resonated with you? Like, how did you think about traits at the time?
I had some traits that I liked, but again, I just didn't have liquid ETH, and I didn't want to just waste or miss an opportunity to become a punk. There was this one, and there was another one. I don't really remember the characteristics. The one that was the floor before mine was actually a forward hat that was very, very clean, and somebody bought it, ahead of me. Never really thought about it much. Kind of just, listen, as a Mexican immigrant, somebody who I don't even know how I ended up at Goldman Sachs, and then leading a team at Barclays, I always saw myself as an underdog. And so as I started thinking more about, once I had the punk in my wallet and I started using it, I started just kind of like identifying a lot more with a floor punk, kind of like the little punk that could. And it just became me. I've tried to use two other punks since. I bought a hoodie punk with clown eyes in the summer of last year, early summer. And whenever I used it, even though it's a hoodie and everybody's like, hoodies, and obviously hoodies are like the Jedi's of the punks, and I love hoodies, people will ping me and be like, that is just not you. It's not you. So it's interesting. So I got rid of that one. And then just recently I bought a Vampy Hair 3D, really like 3D glasses. We got my wife a 3D glass punk as well. And, but also it just, people were like, it's not really you. And I kind of, I've identified so much with this punk that I don't think I can, I can go to any other punk, even if I end up getting like an alien or a zombie or whatever down the line. This is me. Like, this punk is in a bunch of different pieces of art. Art by Alpha Centauri Kid, art by Nest Graphics. A lot of artists have included this punk in their pieces. And so, kind of like changing it will be almost like kind of like having face surgery or completely changing my name in real life. I think it's pretty hard to do that, going forward.
That's beautiful. The little punk that could, indeed. So, I mean, I've got a chance to look at your OpenSea wallet. I mean, you've got a lot of NFTs in there, but you've decided to stay with the CryptoPunk. I guess, like, as your identity, it's an important piece because that's your identity on Twitter and I guess in the Web3 sort of space, and I think even on LinkedIn as well, which is a bit of a bold move. But I guess for you then, like, what does CryptoPunk signify for you? I mean, to carry as your identity, as your mantelpiece, right? It's an important piece.
Yeah, I mean, the meaning of punks is just immense. First of all, being one of the first collections to really adopt this model, generative character, the fact that they, were kind of the inspiration for the token standard that we now use for the majority of NFTs. I just love the timeless look of punks. There really are pieces of art. So to be able to have, 10,000 of such body of work is just, I think, going forward into the future, and hopefully, crypto really growing up to its full potential. I think being able to kind of like safeguard this punk for the next generation will say a lot about who I am and what I'm trying to build in the space. Additionally, just having the punk opened so many doors. I noticed it immediately, not just on Twitter, but professionally. A couple of months after I bought the punk, I changed jobs. I went from Barclays. I now work at Fireblocks. We are the leading custody technology provider in the enterprise space. So pretty much any big company that wants to enter crypto, they use our technology for their wallet infrastructure and the like. I realized that having the punk as my LinkedIn profile, that having the punk as my Zoom profile picture, it just immediately gave me street cred. It reminded me a lot of being 23 years old and traveling to South America and having that Goldman Sachs business card. And even though, I was like 6 months into the job, the first time I went to Chile, Peru was my first trip. The fact that I had that Goldman Sachs business card, it just told people who didn't know me that, they probably will be better off at least paying attention to me. And so it kind of like opened the door. Punks did the same thing for me. It was like you had a punk, so you're part of this group, and hey, punks are worth paying attention to. So that all that value has accrued through my 18-month career in crypto, and yeah, so it means a lot in that sense. There's personal meaning. There's obviously, again, like I said, the value of being part of such a movement, and the fact that pretty much every PFP since is a punk derivative. And I think that eventually accrues value, not just monetarily, but also culturally to the OGs, and those are the punks.
Amazing. And beautifully said as well. I think, yeah, it's definitely opened a lot of doors for me too. I haven't had the balls to change my LinkedIn yet. I might have to take a leap of faith after that speech you just gave, mate. And I'm just looking at your collection now. Like, you've got a pretty diverse collection in the bag. I guess a broad question widely. I mean, what do you like collecting, and why do you collect?
Sure. So my art collecting started, as I mentioned, on Nifty Gateway. It's where I learned a lot. I first and foremost, it gave me an opportunity to connect with artists. I had never in my life collected anything other than soda cans for a Boy Scout badge back when I was like 11 years old. And living in New York, it's extremely difficult to collect clothes even. It's like the spaces are so small. And I obviously having this ability to not just collect, but connect with artists and understand, art a little better. It just completely changed my perspective on many things and how I go about my day to day. So I started just buying a lot of work on Nifty Gateway, stuff that really resonated with me. I don't think I have a particular style that I prefer just yet. I always said to myself, growing up, I just like beautiful things. Obviously, I have my definition of beauty. So if I see something that to me is beautiful, I will gravitate towards it. Everything from Mrs. Sergito all the way out to the punks. There's beauty, and I like collecting it where I can. And so my collection, it's through different wallets, but the majority of like the art pieces are Nifty pieces. I am very, very lucky to like I said, really connect with all the artists. Now they're my friends. They've really helped me just appreciate life outside of finance. It's the people you surround yourself with really help you develop your character, your personality, your understanding of the world. So after 12 years of being focused solely on hanging out with finance people, having this new friendships really opened my eyes. And then I moved on to trying to collect things that I thought will have value in the future. I do collect to at least store some wealth, and then hopefully be able to profit from it. So I do have I would say a nice bag of collectibles. I've sold, I've bought. Right now, I'm really focused on trying to help big companies come into the space. both through work and then through some of my collecting. I think they really are the key to on-ramping the millions of people that we know are going to end up in NFTs. And I think that having an active participation in how they come into the space will help us help them, help those new people navigate in a good way. I think a lot of the onboarding last year on the back of the, kind of like froth and FOMO was probably very toxic for new members coming in, buying the absolute top and a bunch of stuff. And then just for brands and corporations that were not really going about it in kind of like an organic way. So I think, us who've been here for a little longer, taking a stake and really helping them navigate, I think it's important. And so, one way of doing that is by collecting their pieces, and just like with the artists, engaging with, the project managers or whoever is running those programs, and really helping them think about, not the next drop, not about the royalties, but, how do I build value for my collectors for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And yeah, so everything in between. I like to experiment. I would love to have more bandwidth to just really dive down every rabbit hole. Unfortunately, it's also have to make a living, but it's my collection, I would say, is just very broad, because it reflects kind of like all those different stages that I've gone through in my journey. And yeah, if anything particular stands out, more than happy to talk about it.
Oh, good. No, super interesting, man. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about what you're currently doing now, because I think you started talking a little bit about, onboarding institutions. Maybe if you could talk, just introduce Fireblocks and what you sort of do there.
Sure. So Fireblocks is a 4-year-old company that started by a group of cybersecurity experts who realized there was no institutional level wallet infrastructure available to funds that were engaged in trading crypto, later on DeFi funds, even exchanges and retail wallets who are servicing hundreds and thousands of end clients like you and I. Well, obviously hardware wallets and multi-sigs don't really scale to service those kinds of needs. You need more levels of security. You need checks and balances. Make sure that those assets are not being put up to a single point of failure. So Fireblocks is an MPC solution that allows companies to have distributed infrastructure in regards to who has access to the assets that they have in their wallets. Our technology allows our customers to self-custody. So it's in the ethos of the space. We have a lot of the large NFT collecting funds, large DeFi funds, and a lot of other types of traditional finance clients that are using our technology in lieu of having multi-sigs, in lieu of having homegrown solutions. Would really help them kind of come into crypto, start playing in the ecosystem in a safe and secure way. Now, we have 1,600 institutional clients. They're mostly financial clients. Obviously, with the advent of Web3, there's a lot of non-financial type companies coming to the space, gaming studios, companies with large portfolios of IP, retailers, ticketing services, airlines, car makers. I mean, we've all seen them. And they're saying, hey, we want to come into the space. We want to make sure that we have custody of our assets. We want to make sure that we also have a secure way of deploying smart contracts, because obviously these companies with big IP portfolios, right? If there's a smart contract out there that allows somebody to mint a version of one of their main characters, and that wallet that controls that smart contract gets hacked, well, that's pretty much like Coca-Cola giving free access to its secret recipe, right? So they're starting to think, how do I keep all my, if it's a game, my in-game economy secure? How do I make sure, nobody can come in and just mint a bunch of skins or tokens or the like? So we're using everything we've learned from securing 1,600 financial institutions and applying it to Web3. My role is, business development. So not only do I find those clients that are looking to onboard, but also walk them through and help them understand kind of best practices, what they have to be thinking about, introduce them to some of our other partners who who might be helping clients to talk about it. Design the art on the tokens, design tokenomics, even do the tokenization. So it's kind of like being at the forefront of that on-ramping of major institutions into the space.
Amazing. Right. So another question, like, when are the institutions coming in to buy all our bags?
It's funny. I think, the whole institutions are coming meme is it's kind of a very crypto Twitter thing. I think the institutions are most interesting in participating in the ecosystem. A lot of them in capitalizing on the ecosystem, right? So, for example, Bank of New York Mellon, they are the largest traditional custodian in the world. They hold trillions of assets for everything from pension funds to other banks, hedge funds, and the like. Right? They're using Fireblocks to enter the space and offer digital asset custody. So it's a huge institution coming into the space and hopefully allowing other institutions to buy. But the reality is mostly, it's the infrastructure that's being put down. Same thing with the VC funds that raise, billions of dollars to go and invest in Web3 startups. Those guys buy the equity for the most part, right? Like, they're not really buying a ton of Ether. I mean, some of them do mint the NFTs. The reality is kind of like everybody's still putting down kind of like the pipes for the space. And it's good because it will allow others to come in, and it obviously helps the space grow. But, if you hear of like a large bank coming in, I would gather they're coming in to offer you Bitcoin trading on your retail app, much more than them buying Bitcoin directly. And this is on the back of just like the lack of regulatory clarity that we have in the US, which obviously the US kind of like drives regulation across the Western nations. And a lot of companies do tell us, hey, I do want to buy Ether. I do want to take a more active role in the ecosystem. I do want to, help validate networks. The problem is, like, there's no accounting rules. I'm a public company. I don't know how to report this. I don't want to get dinged. I don't want to put up X amount of reserves for it. So that's really what's kind of like impending, what's minimizing companies' ability to really come and buy our bags. But we continue to see museums, for example, in the NFT space, come out and say, hey, we're going to start collecting NFTs. And I think, it's not going to be that rush that we, saw last year when people really kind of like felt the FOMO to jump in. But we continue to see validation little by little, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. Probably more time than most people who are underwater on their summer 2021 bags want. But yeah, I think, we'll eventually get there. I just don't see it being like, super immediate, even on the back of like major headlines.
Understood. And very well explained. Hopefully the first thing they come for are the punks. Mate,
I'm not selling mine.
Mate, and just I think you mentioned the Mad Pups just for a little bit as well. Can you just explain what that is and how that works?
Sure. So I'm a founding member of the Mad Pups. The Mad Pups is a collectors collective that was born out of Nifty Gateway. So Matt Dog Jones, the artist, had this really cool drop where you could redeem 5 of his limited edition works that he had dropped a few minutes earlier, and pretty much burn them in exchange for a one-of-one of his. Now, when that mechanic was announced, those limited edition works shot up to like $100,000 each, because his one-of-ones were worth, $500,000 and above. A bunch of us friends in the Nifty Gateway ecosystem who had one of the limited edition works realized, well, it's going to be impossible for us to go and buy the other 4 pieces. So let's just all band together and redeem one of the works. And we did that. It was 4 of us originally. One of us had 2. We redeemed one of the pieces. It's called Overpass Night. It's on the Mad Pups Nifty Gateway wallet. And from there, we realized there was a lot of just power in collecting together and curating together. So we eventually expanded the group to 8 total members. And what we did is we were working very closely with Nifty Gateway, trying to help them kind of like rectify some of the moves that were not good that they did, and I apologize for that. We became one of their first curators that were non-Nifty Gateway employees. We helped them pilot the program that they now call publishers, where third parties can apply to be curators on the platform and then do drops for other artists. I think we're the third largest publisher in Nifty Gateway after 33 and King of Midtown. We sold what we call the Pops Pass on New Year's Day that allows holders to mint our drops. So we've had drops co-curated with famous folks like Drifter Shoots. He helped us curate our Black History or Black Heritage Month drop. We've done women's drops, and we're just trying to help kind of like same thing, creators come into the space, do it in a way in which allows them to kind of like dip their toes in the water, put out great art, and hopefully also reward our community with access to those creators before they just blow up on Super Rare or the like.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice one. Understood. And just from your curatorial eye, then, like, are there any collections that you're looking at in this market at the moment?
Yeah, so this is not Mad Pups related, but I've been looking at kind of just artists that tell a story with their body of work. I think, I don't know, there's something about an ability to create 5, 6, 7, 10 pieces that are kind of like frames of a larger story, but that also sit kind of like and hold their own in the space. So as a one-on-one, they work, but also they're part of a bigger thing. I love storytelling. I think obviously the ability to create narratives, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, is something that is very human, right? I don't think other beings on the planet really have that ability to create stories. If you think about, I think it was Punk6509 who tweeted a couple of weeks ago, everything you believe today was made up by somebody in the past. And obviously that's a deep philosophical conversation that we're not going to get into right now, but I found myself getting kind of more attracted to those artists that are able to build out a narrative through their work. So there's a guy called Cardinal, who's also a very good collector. He's done a drop on Foundation. Actually, the last piece just minted yesterday. It's about to close on the auction. I bought a piece called Red Handed. It's kind of like glitch art, which obviously glitch art is very very crypto native thanks to Xcopy and kind of his legacy. But then this artist has a very dark palette, and so you really have to kind of like look at the details, and there's a story being told in the pieces. So I really, really like that. We've seen other artists that are able to create a very unique palette really take off. Obviously, Grand Yoon comes to mind. Very, very unique, style of work, and he blew up. So I had a 101 of his as well. Who else? I don't know. I think I don't want to leave anybody out, but I really just want to kind of like leave people with the idea that collect for the future, collect for being able to host somebody one day once we actually have really good frames at home. And when people ask you, well, what is this piece? You're able to tell the story behind it, whether that is connected with the artist back in the Nifty Gateway days, and this is one of his earliest pieces. For example, Nest Graphics, which is somebody I collected early on. His pieces really always tell a story as well. And there's a bunch of Easter eggs. Again, that meme, that narrative. So being able to tell somebody in 15, 20 years from now, like, this is kind of the why of the work, which is, what we do when we go to museums. The pieces that have the most famous pieces usually have a story around it. When you go on a museum tour, right? And you have those little headsets or whatever they might be. Like, it's those pieces where you can really dig into the details, the symbolism, the what was happening, the artist's life at the time where they painted that or they created that. Those are the things that really, I think, are going to have very long lasting value. So that's what I seek as well, the beauty, as I mentioned earlier, but also the ability to say, okay, well, this is part of a story. This is part of a larger narrative. And this is why, I think it's special.
Nice one. I think you've taught me a few things that sort of unpack there too. But story and narratives is a really important one. And I think you're right. I think just going back to the whole meme piece, I think the question is whether or not these pieces are going to be spoken about in 5, 10, 20 years from now. And you have to sort of stay relevant to draw that attention. And you really need a powerful narrative and story to keep you relevant, right?
Yep. No, I think Ferocious, for example, did really well with his auction house drop. I believe it was Christie's, where it was kind of pieces of work representing the different teenage years and the struggles that he went through. Again, you're able to look at that and be like, okay, well, this is what was happening then, or this is why this is represented in such a manner. So storytelling, Alpha Centauri Kid does a really good job too with his Muse narrative, right? So everybody now knows when you hear the Muse, even though it's such a muse, having a muse is such a kind of like commonality for artists across all kinds of mediums and genres and styles, from singers to poets to everything. Within NFTs, ACK has kind of made this concept of the muse his, right? So now he's able to, whenever he does something, he just says, well, it's the muse who inspired me, or the muse who told me to do this. And you're able to take, whatever particular work it is and place it within that framework. And I think it starts making even more sense. So yeah, I love narratives. I love storytelling.
Beautiful. And when you look back at your NFT career to date, do you have any memorable wins or losses worth sharing?
A lot of losses, both money that I left on the table and then opportunities that I missed. I think everybody does. I try not to focus on them too much. In confidence, sometimes you look back and you struggle mentally with some of the sums of money. Confiding on some other collectors as well, and they have in me like, holy shit, what the hell was I thinking? And I think mental health is super important in this space, and so I think it's important not to really focus too much on the negatives. Confiding on some other collectors as well, and they have in me like, holy shit, what the hell was I thinking? And I think mental health is super important in this space, and so I think it's important not to really focus too much on the negatives. Wins, I think for me the biggest win is just being able to give my life kind of like a new dimension, look at the world with different layers on top. Found myself walking through Amsterdam a couple of weeks ago, and after meeting actually a punk there, Alex Rodo, and having an amazing conversation that lasted more than 2 hours with somebody that I had never met before, and with whom, I kind of just felt like a really good friend just because we're both punks. Walking around the city with Mr. Sergito, and just from my newfound appreciation of art and light and color and composition that came from being in NFTs, I started appreciating, kind of like the beauty in the city and the architecture and the canals and the people much more differently. And so I don't think I would have had that appreciation had I not spent the last 18 months, obsessing over NFTs, meeting artists, understanding why things work, why some things don't, understanding creative processes, understanding narratives. And yeah, so I'm pretty happy now. I live in New York City. There's so many different things to see. And after spending 13 years here, you kind of just, go from your apartment to the office to the kind of places where you hang out. And I never really look up anymore. Now I look up and I wonder if Drifter's up there, taking a picture from like a crane or the top of a spiral. I look at, when I'm flying, I look down at the land when I'm about to, and I wonder, what would this look in Grand Yun style? What will this look in like, a different artist that I've been looking at? I think of the meaning, for example, in DK Motion's work, and how he's always contrasting kind of like the good and the bad of life, the happy and the sad. So just having this new layer of understanding, of appreciation, of beautiful things, and finding beauty in my surroundings, it's I think the biggest win that's come out for me from being in NFTs.
Amazing. And if you were to think about your favorite punk personality in the space, like who would that be?
Favorite punk personality? Ooh, you're gonna make me you're gonna name names. Listen, I'm grateful to a lot of punks that have helped me along the way. Snowfro, um, in a space where there's really no nationalities, and we really champion just being yourself. I do appreciate that he's Mexican and so successful. And so not only that, but he was the nicest guy to me early on, and he's still the nicest guy. He keeps pushing the space forward. G Money has become a really good friend. I really also appreciate what he's been doing for the space, and I love how he's been able to brand himself and continue to innovate. These early on also took me under his wing, taught me a lot about generative art and thinking about NFTs as kind of like a video game. That helped me a lot. We were part of first Metaverse DAO and then Neon DAO. Aaron Wright and Pri from Tribute Labs, who helped kind of just incubate Neon DAO and then many other DAOs like Punk DAO. I think they're pillars in the space, and I'm super grateful to have met them. Tony Herrera, who's like the godfather of punks. He helped us get my wife's first punk. Again, I had Ether stuck in an exchange. He bought the punk for us, held it in his wallet. He's been a great guide. We now share a noun. Also with Ray, who's also a punk. So, obviously 6529 was done for NFTs as a whole. But then folks like AC, Batsupion, it's just, way too many punks to name. I'm just grateful to be part of this big family, and hopefully able to kind of like pay it forward in a way that honors those who came before and those who reached out or lent me a hand early on.
Beautiful. Well said, Sergito. And if you were to describe punk culture in a few words, how would you describe it?
I think, the word OG gets used a lot, but few fail to define it. And a lot of like the OGs we're using early are no longer in the community or focused on their own projects. I think for me, the punks are still OG in the sense of the word, that you come to the punks Telegram, you come to the punks Discord, and you find a group of folks that's really focused on trying to, one, promote the ethos and the culture of the space, kind of almost like safeguard what NFTs, the potential that they have. You see it in the fact that, still to this day, a lot of like the leading projects and innovation come from punks or former punk holders who, maybe earned their chops on the punks Discord. So OG in that way, in that we're still, we believe we're culture carriers, and we're pushing kind of like the NFT culture forward. Obviously, there's a lot of new folks in the space, and that's great. The space is growing. But I think, as you see some even of these new people come into punks, there was NFT Press. He tweeted out this morning, he never really cared too much for art, but after he bought his punk and interacted with the community, he started getting a better feeling for what it was like to collect art and a different appreciation for it. So I think punks continue to be OG in that sense. And then just a very cohesive community, not really worried too much about the money, but much more about the cultural impact and how do we make sure that the space continues to grow in kind of like a good organic way where, you can make a lot of money, but it's win-win-win all around instead of just kind of like winner takes all.
That's fun. And if you could pass on a message to the next owner of your punk, what would you like to say to them?
Message to the next owner of my punk. Hi, son. Hi, daughter. I hope you're watching this one day, and it is you who hold this punk or your mom's punk. If it's not you, and if it's somebody else who's holding this punk, I really hope that the legacy of this punk continues to live on. I think, this punk is a little floor punk that could. And, we try to be somebody who's welcoming to new punks, to foster a good space to share ideas, to bring people together, seeks to, meet with other punks in real life, reaches out to community members. That's why we have the Punks Telegram, which is just a different vibe than the Punks Discord. So I hope that, you future punk holder, can continue to honor that and building on the little legacy that we started with it.
Awesome. Well, Sergito, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been super fun. I gotta thank you because I think I've sort of been a big fan of yours as I sort of came into the NFT space as well, and watching your tweets and learning from you as we're going along. And even in this conversation today, you dropped a few gems for me too. So really, really proud that I'm part of the punk community, and obviously you being. I sort of see you as a bit of taking a leadership role in the punks community in some ways. You're keeping the Telegram alive, and you're keeping the whole family together as well. So really appreciate you for doing that. And so thanks for coming on PunkCast, man.
No, thanks for the invite and the kind words. I think we've seen a lot of punks build new stuff and build out communities. So I appreciate every single punk that's putting their time and effort out there in doing things like this. It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to chat with you. So, thank you for your contributions to the punks community, and I can't wait to watch every single PunkCast interview that you do.
Amazing, mate. And just, I guess, final closing. Are there any sort of final closing comments from you? And I guess how can people find you, etc.?
Yeah, no, I'm Sergito on Twitter. I think final comment: just enjoy being in the space. There's a lot of, we're so early, we're all going to make it. And those are nice when everything's pumping. Obviously, things are a little different right now, but you're still at the forefront of something that is innovating and there's revolutionizing, not just culture, not just collectibles, not just art, but also the financial system, charity, a bunch of other industries. And so being here is a privilege, and make sure that, you do your best to take advantage of the opportunity, build, grow, educate yourself, and get a punk, reach out. We'd love to have you in the Telegram.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sergito. And guys, that wraps up another episode of PunkCast for the week. And we'll be back again next week with another punk. Bye for now.